The Lord of the Rings Gollum is the latest installment in a long line of games with absolutely abysmal launches. It's a sadly all too common story in the current gaming climate. A game gets released to a plethora of bugs and promised features that just don't exist, and then a few days later the developers whip out the apology template and make a tweet.
We are deeply sorry. We're sorry. We're sorry.
To give the devs some credit, nobody expected this game to be good. Whilst many games like Cyberpunk, Anthem or No Man's Sky were treated to a swarm of negative reviews upon release, they came as a surprise to many people after having so much hype behind them. You could argue they were always doomed to fail, because how could they live up to so much fanfare? However, The Lord of the Rings Gollum didn't have this same level of hype. In fact, it had the opposite of hype. It had play down. Yes, that's right. From the first day the trailer was released, people asked,
Why?
Not a single person in the history of gaming has ever thought, you know what, I really want to play as Gollum. So when fans of The Lord of the Rings were treated to demonic kawaii Gollum, the dislikes came pouring in. The uninteresting gameplay, the countless bugs, and the frankly terrible graphics for a game released in 2023 are just some of the reasons that have led to people asking, are games getting worse? I mean, this is Gollum from Shadow of Mordor, released 10 years ago, and this is Gollum in the latest game. The Lord of the Rings films are my favourite movies ever. I grew up on them, I've seen them more times than I can count, and I'm absolutely enamoured by Tolkien's world, so I can't say it didn't sting a little when I saw this beloved IP get so mistreated. And I'm definitely not alone with this feeling. Many fans are becoming more and more disappointed with each new release of their favourite franchise, whether it's the games themselves or the somewhat underwhelming TV adaptations. But change is inevitable, both in industries and within ourselves. So are games nowadays really on the decline? Or are we fighting an impossible battle to relive that same experience we had as kids when we first opened that Nintendo 64 at Christmas and played Ocarina of Time all throughout the night? If you ask me what my favourite games are, the vast majority of them would be at least 15 years old. Sure, I have some favourites released in recent times, like The Last of Us or Spider-Man, but they're definitely less common. The thing is, if you compare games nowadays to those back in the day, games today are objectively better on so many metrics. Let's start with the obvious one, graphics. I mean, yeah, they're better, nobody is going to argue with that one, I think. But also, graphics are often the most overvalued aspect of game design. And a big critique of modern games is that developers focus too much on graphics over anything else. But what about gameplay? Well, it'd be hard to argue that gameplay is worse now than before. I mean, do you remember GoldenEye? If you haven't played it in a while, get that dusty thing out of your garage and plug it in, because holy crap are the controls bad in this game. A Nintendo 64 controller and an FPS game do not go well together. But you know, 96 on Metacritic. But hey, we didn't know any better. We hadn't reached the pinnacle of FPS gaming yet with Modern Warfare and 2 analog sticks. Game development has had a lot of time now to get better. With improvements to hardware, software, and skill sets, games are just better designed. Movement mechanics are leagues better than in the past, worlds are so much more interesting and dynamic, and everything from controls to narratives have so much more depth. But still, I get that this is one of the best games I've ever played feeling so much less often than before. Today, game development is so much more accessible than ever, and this is amazing. There's so many game engines and tutorials out there that you don't need a bunch of money and a big team to make games anymore. The limit is your imagination. Unfortunately though, this has led to an oversaturation of the market. With so many games now getting released each year, there's a lot of mediocre titles out there, so it's harder to find the cream of the crop. And you can't always rely on AAA titles anymore. When I was younger, every other game had me hooked like it was another Christmas, but now most games are just fine. I play a bit, have an alright time, spend another 50 hours getting 100%, and then I move on. But why? The obvious answer is that I was 10. Of course video games were the best thing ever. But it's a very common rhetoric nowadays that games are just worse than they used to be. A very common complaint I see, and one I've sometimes agreed with, is that games don't bother being original anymore and just follow trends. Businesses following trends? The audacity! When PUBG was a hit, it was shortly followed by Fortnite and its ability to earn an absolutely ludicrous amount of money for Epic each year. So naturally, loads of other companies jumped on the bandwagon, to varying degrees of success.
You have a lot to learn about this town, sweetie.
But this isn't new either. Since the dawn of gaming, trends have been set, and developers have followed them. Remember MMOs in the early 2000s? It was an absolute onslaught. But Doomsee, Vanilla WoW was amazing! Yes it was. But remember Archlord? No, that's because it sucked. It sucked real bad. It's survivorship bias. We're only remembering and talking about the great games of the past, but we're definitely remembering that absolute train wreck that came out last Tuesday. But if all you see are battle royales, roguelikes, and pixel art RPGs, then you're probably looking in the wrong place. You've got to look for those gems, because there are a lot of them out there. They're just not as well known. When it comes to advertising space, it's hard to compete with the giants of the industry. So yes, if it's not usually a cup of tea, unfortunately you will see the next Call of Duty and the latest installment of Fortnite advertised constantly and wonder, where are all the cool original titles nowadays, like when I was a wee lad? They're out there, trust me, and you have more choice now than you ever have. I gotta admit though, my bar for what makes a good game is definitely a lot higher than it used to be, and I'm certainly not alone here. But that's because I've been spoiled with such high quality games throughout my life. I genuinely wonder, if Ocarina of Time was instead released in 2023, but it was the exact same game, only with modern day graphics, would I enjoy it anywhere near as much? Or would I be complaining about the often barren world, the pretty bland character interactions, and this f***ing guy? All of which are very common complaints of modern day games. I don't know, maybe we just accepted it then because that's the best we had. We didn't know how good it could get. I will say though, at least games back then didn't have loot boxes and microtransactions. In 1981, Epics. In 1981, a game development company released what might have been the first ever expansion pack, Dungeon Quest, Upper Reaches of what is wrong with this company? And ever since then, gaming has been nothing but $60 DLCs and microtransactions shoved in your face. Okay, it took a little longer than that, but in the days before loot boxes and battle passes, the most common form of added content was expansion packs. The Sims was famous for this, with each game in the series featuring at least 7 billion expansions. My completely unbiased mind has fond memories of the state of expansion packs in the early noughties. I remember when The Sims 2 University first came out, I got so excited that I ran straight to my nearest game, slapped 20 big ones on the counter, and then legged it to my friend's house where we gamed all night getting really good at studying. Then The Sims 3 came out, and I was ready to get really good at studying all over again. But there was no university. There were no pets. There were no seasons. All the things they had previously added to The Sims 2 they just left out so they could resell it all over again for The Sims 3, and then again for The Sims 4. These days it's an all too common practice in the video game industry to make a game, take something out of it, and then sell it off as paid DLC later on. Sometimes on the same day the game is released. Oh hey look, you can buy a Golem emote pack for £2 in a single player game on release day. Oh my god, I can't believe this gaming is so bad nowadays. DLC isn't all doom and gloom though. Remember The Witcher 3? Hands down, Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine are the best DLCs ever made. They're practically full games in their own right. I mean, what DLC has an extra 30 hours of gameplay? And really good gameplay for that matter.
Care for a quick round of Gwent?
DLC is great for making some extra dosh on your famous title, but the real money is in microtransactions. Ever since that damn horse armor, developers have realized the error of their ways. Cosmetic in-game purchases are the future. Or you know, you could just make it pay to win. If a game has a battle pass or an in-game store that sells purely cosmetic stuff, fine. I'm not that fussed. I'll pretty much never buy anything unless I'm super into a game and there's a good value cheese hat or something. But what really grinds my biscuits is when the first thing you see when you open the game is every single live service game nowadays just rams microtransactions down your throat like a hot dog eating contest. You can't even get to the tutorial without accidentally going into crippling depth over an anime assault rifle. At least in this context you actually know what you're buying though. Don't even get me started with loot boxes, which is essentially legalized gambling for children. Thankfully though, this is getting way less common due to government regulation. But so far all this talk about whether games are worse are just my views. What does the consensus say? Here are the average Metacritic scores by year from 2000 to 2022. I've omitted 2023 from this chart since this year hasn't finished yet. But according to this, games are worse than ever! That's it, case closed, games suck now. What's really apparent is that user reviews have trended downwards over the last 2 decades pretty hard, but critic scores are almost in a U-shape. What I find super interesting is that up until 2011, users rated games higher than critics, but since then that's been flipped, and the gap has only gotten wider. Going through user reviews of a lot of recent releases, there's definitely a lot more protest voting than before, and honestly quite often for pretty valid reasons. There are so many games out there that are well received by critics, but are getting absolutely obliterated by users for bad ports, poor optimization, or because a developer did some real shady stuff. Like The Last of Us is considered a masterpiece. It's critically acclaimed and both critics and users alike absolutely love the game, but with its latest PC port, it didn't perform quite so well. So the reviews are a real mixed bag of Skittles. I mean, the game itself is amazing, but its performance on PC was atrocious, so it's bad? Like, how do you even review this kind of thing? In general, I found that user reviews are a lot harsher, often giving zeros until the issues are fixed, which usually don't get updated even after they are fixed, while some people don't have any performance issues at all, and so are like 10 out of 10, baby! So, are games worse nowadays? Yes. I mean, no. Maybe. I don't know. Look, just go play Ori and the Will of the Wisps and tell me games nowadays can't be absolute sensations. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. Go pet your cat, drink some orange juice, and just have a great day.